Hi, folks. This is Don Meisner with the North Country Fishing Report. You know, this week I'm trying to share some of my extraordinary memories of going fishing in different parts of our country and in Canada, and some of the things that I remember the most. And they're always things about nature, about the animals and the birds that live around us, and that I discovered on days when I was going fishing. And I want to tell you about one of the times that stands out to me, and I'll never be able to really, you have to have been able to experience what I did to understand. But anyway, I was with my buddy John Clark, who at the time I think was he was either the wrestling coach or the athletic director of St. Lawrence University at the time. And we had been given the opportunity to go way up to the George River, 1,000 miles north of Montreal, to fish for salmon. And we were staying in these little, there were like tents, but I think they had a structured floor, and they'd been set up by our Inuit hosts. And so anyway, it was at night, probably 4 or 3 in the morning, and I felt something jostle my shoulder, and it was John, who had been up and was shaking my shoulder to wake me. And he said, "Don, you've got to come outside the tent right now. You got to see what is out here." And I'm wondering, what in the world is he talking about? So I get outside the tent, and I had entered a world that I never would have dreamed I could have entered. It took me back to what cavemen must have experienced, what people before we had really any understanding of science must have thought. And what was happening? The Northern Lights. And we talk about them and have seen pictures of Northern Lights here. And every now and then in our area, we have different times when we actually can see the Northern Lights to some extent. But up there in the top of the world in the Arctic, and the Northern Lights were doing their dancing across the sky and across the landscape, and all these neon and green. I remember the lights, and they were like coming down and moving and dancing and darting, and it seemed like they were alive. And I've never, ever experienced anything like it. It was one of the high points of my entire life, was to be there that night up close to the Arctic and seeing the sky lit up by Northern Lights. It's something that you can't even describe it. Even though now we know what they are and so forth, it's still, it borders on magic. It borders on the majestic. And I can only imagine why people back then would attribute it to whatever they did. I can just imagine what their minds must have thought. But this is an experience that I can tell you is one of the greatest experiences of my life. I was swept up in it. You became almost just a part of it. You were just there. It wasn't just being an observer. You got caught up in it. It was just absolutely incredible. And again, we were up there to fish for Atlantic salmon that had come in from the ocean to the George River. Just an incredible opportunity. But the real highlight was the Northern Lights. Until next time, folks, this is Don Meisner with the North Country Fishing Report.